This is Joe Cole.
This is Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and you're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. I am back, your fourth choice host with the most, even getting love for the fourth choice option, which is awesome recently. Joined yet again by my partners in crime, Abdullah and Jessy, to answer a little bit of mailbag. The team's on a dumb international break right now after just 2 FAWSL matches. It just is the buzzkill that you didn't know that you needed in your life. And so we're going to answer some mailbag questions, get into the team, get into the tactics a little bit, and then we're going to preview a pretty big game against Manchester United coming up next weekend. So lots going on here. There is a huge amount of international news to cover, though, so it's probably where we're going to start. But just a quick shout out, just a quick one from Wolfsis, probably the best fourth choice host in the world, to me. How about that? Fourth
Nick,
choice.
I've got a question. This comes from someone with no profile picture. Is this just your alt on Twitter?
you found my burner account, damn it. Okay, well, it was fun while it lasted. I'll create a new one next week for more self-compliments. That's what I need. That is right. Yeah. So look, you'll know it's me because the avatar will have some sort of mustache in it. So just be aware for all future burner accounts that's going to happen. But look, guys, we are in this kind of weird and, in my opinion, dumb international break. But there has been some pretty cool action happening so far. I guess I'll pass it to you, Jessy. John Anderson helping keep a clean sheet for her beloved country.
Yeah, we've had lots of appearances from everyone. Joanna and Magda, obviously, clean sheets at Sweden. Millie Bright with a clean sheet for England. And then a host of goals and assists. Goals for Pernille Harder, Bethany England, Jessie and Erin Cuthbert. And then assists for Guro. Beth got an assist as well as 2 goals. Sophie, Ingle and Aniek Nouwen. I've been calling her Aniek Nouwen, but I actually watched the Dutch commentary on this and they call her Aniek Nouwen. So there we go. That's what I learned over this international break.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. There doesn't appear to be an A or an R at the end of that name, which makes it very difficult for me to understand the Dutch. But at the end of the day, it's been a pretty comprehensive international break, as you just covered. The one that we have to touch on, though, guys, is Pernille. She becomes Denmark's all-time top scorer, male or female, with 66 total goals. Abdullah, you've been parading around, deploying marching bands to sing the praises of Pernille Harder. Why don't you go get stuck in on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the parade lined up for tomorrow morning, so I think we'll get that running for Monday morning. But no, she's been fantastic. I mean, definitely one of the GOATs already, without a doubt. Are really up there, just scores goals for fun. And you see how important she is for her country. I mean, Denmark have produced some good players, not in a team to name one of them, but Pernille Harder is just up there. And I think, any chance that they're going to have on an international stage, if Pernille's not playing, their chance plummets by tenfold. So she's amazing. I'm hoping that she can replicate this goal scoring form for Chelsea come this season.
Jessy, male or female, there's been a lot of players that have played for Denmark over the years. And I think to be she's not at the end of her career right now. I mean, this is a person kind of in their prime. It's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, it's super impressive. And I think the funny thing as well with Denmark is they obviously missed out on the 2019 World Cup because they basically threw a match because of this disagreement with the FA. So you've also got this feeling like they reached the final of the 2017 Euros. So there's this feeling that, she's missed out on opportunities on the biggest stage. She still amassed 66 goals to become the all-time top scorer. And yeah, as you say, Nick, there's still so much more to go. And I think, Denmark will be a really interesting package when we get to the Euros next year, just because they've kind of drifted off the international stage as a result of missing that World Cup. And yeah, she's a great player to have in your team for sure.
Yeah, I mean, missing what could have been an additional 4 or 5, 6 super competitive matches. I mean, you just don't know, right, where her tally would be otherwise. But pretty convincing that she is now Denmark's all-time leading scorer in international play. So congratulations to her, obviously. And if she could put in 66 for Chelsea just this year, that would be tremendous. So no pressure, obviously, but just go ahead and put in the double six there. Another one that we have to absolutely pay tribute to is Chelsea's Ji Soo-yeon, who has been unbelievable for South Korea. She is now South Korea's all-time top scorer, male or female, with 59 goals. Incredible achievement. I mean, maybe even more so, Jessy, because she's not just an out-and-out goal scorer. I mean, she's so creative, so influential in the midfield, plays as a 10, plays as an 8, can play up top. I mean, she has played every conceivable forward position for Chelsea over the years, has kind of found her home in the midfield recently. But just talk about this wonderful player.
Yeah, her versatility is amazing. And, I think I've been guilty over the years of thinking, oh, maybe this is kind of it for G. She's been at the club for such a long time. Really one of Chelsea's big standout signings when we were almost at the start of this journey. And, she's really like the face of South Korean football in many ways, She does loads of stuff there with their players union. And yeah, she's a great goal scorer as well. And it is easy to forget because of where she plays. And another player who's, maybe missed out on playing at the very top of international football, by nature of the club. Again, South Korea just missed out on going to the Olympics this year because they lost to China in a really close match. But to still score all these goals, it's impressive. And when you look at, Pernille, Ji Soo-yeon, to have them in this Chelsea side, you just feel like so lucky. And then you think about when we talk about that stat where Chelsea always score, because, Sam Kerr, she's Australia's all-time women's top scorer. She got that in the Olympics, and I think she's only a couple of Tim Cahill's records. So I reckon, in a couple, I think they play Ireland this week. So, who knows? This week we could see Sam do it too. And it's just crazy to have them all playing in one team.
It's also just incredible that you have then Fran Kirby just out there as well, who's no slouch from an international standpoint, but maybe not quite up there with the amount of goals. But I mean, the absurd talent here is crazy. You did want to call out, Abdullah, a standout performance from Nouwen, right? Right? Are we getting that right?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Now it's just gonna take some getting used to, just because I'm gonna look at Nick, I'm gonna look at it and go, yeah, Aniek Nouwen, and it's like, no, I bet this entire time the Dutch fans have been berating us through the screens, going, you're pronouncing it wrong. What's wrong with you guys? What are you doing? But
what's wrong with you guys? Okay. Have some of that.
we'll try and figure it out. No, I think she's had a good standout international break. I think her performances for the Netherlands have generally been good. Even at the Olympics, she had a few good moments, a few good glimpses that we were seeing. And I think it goes to show that when she gets a run of games and when she gets a little bit of rhythm going, she gets into that rhythm and she can actually start playing well. And I think if she were to get that at Chelsea, hopefully maybe she does get an opportunity at some point soon. I just hope it's not one game, and if she has an okay game, she drops out. I think she's a player that needs 2-3 games on the trot to be able to really show what she's like. So hopefully we get to see that.
Absolutely. And then a final piece of good news from this absurd international break. We have a video of Maren Mjelde with the ball at her feet again. Look, we don't know when she's going to be back. Her ACL was only 6 or 5 months ago, I think, something like that. So it's probably a bit too soon. These are typically, at least in major American sports, these are typically like 6 to 9 month injury recovery periods. So we're probably a little ways off of her returning. But the fact that we're seeing this, Jessy, that we're seeing her kind of get back so quickly with the ball at her feet, it has to be a positive sign for the team, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think she actually said on Instagram it was 6 months today, I believe. So yeah, she seems like, she's doing well. She's obviously really progressed through all the stages, kind of from running in the pool to running on grass, and yeah, to to see her, with the ball at her feet again. I've got to say, her touch looked pretty good still. I tell you what, if I hadn't played football for that long, I'd be ballooning balls everywhere. Maybe just for the edit, they made it look good, but she looked like she was still in pretty decent shape for someone who hadn't touched a ball for 6 months. So fingers crossed, we'll get her back soon.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes with these injuries, it's the repair can be intact and it could be really solid. It's just building the muscle back up around it that requires some time. And so that's oftentimes you see a lot of fans get frustrated that like, oh, she's back, she's running around. It's like, it's not that easy. Like you have to really build back up to full fitness and trust it. And then there's a lot of sports psychology on top of that too, right? Can I trust it? Am I going to get hurt again? You see oftentimes there are players who come back a little too soon who, don't necessarily trust themselves, even though they have the desire to go back out. It's clear that they don't necessarily trust. So I think let's give her some time. Let's make sure that she's fully fit. And then when she comes back, let's see her continue to do Marimelda things. How about that? That sounds pretty good. Okay, cool. We're going to branch into the mailbag right after a quick commercial break. Thank you to these sponsors for supporting the show, and we will be right back. All right, we're going to get into the mailbag part, and just thank you to the Chelsea community on Twitter, on Instagram, on our Discord server. You guys are the best. You asked some really thoughtful questions about this excellent Chelsea women's team, and so we're going to start off with a couple around ambition around the Chelsea women's team. The first one, Abdullah, is coming right to you. What do you think that this team can achieve this season? We touched on this a little bit in the season preview, although after having seen a couple of games, has your mind changed?
I think it comes... I don't think it's completely changed in the sense that I think I like the change that's happened in the sense of Emma's gone, all right, I'm going to switch to a back three. Obviously, because I wanted it for the last few months, and I thought this was the best way forward. But I think it's... The one thing that everyone was calling for was that, okay, there's a little bit of predictability last season where you're playing the same system, the same team, everyone's the same, everything's the same. So eventually someone was going to figure it out and then stop the team. And Barcelona happened to just do that, and whether they were lucky with the first goal or two or whatever it is, it can be said, but they figured out a way and they stifled Chelsea and they won 4-0. And I'm glad to see that there's been a complete change. And then that's something new. While it is going to take some time to get used to, I don't see the so-called weaker teams being a problem. I think that'll be fine. I think Chelsea will beat them. Like they beat Everton 4-0. I think they'll continue doing that. It'll all come down to whether they can beat the big teams with this system and actually come out on top in those games. I still think they can make the latter stages of the Champions League and they'll be fighting for the title at the end of the day. And considering City's calamitous week the other week, getting out of the Champions League to Real Madrid and then losing to Spurs, albeit in contentious circumstances, it goes to show that anybody can lose. You can gain points and lose points at any point of the season. So right now, while Arsenal look like the team in front in form, they could drop points to somebody else and then suddenly Chelsea in front, suddenly City are in front. So I still think they can fight for the title and I still think they can get to the latter stages of the Champions League, but it depends on how quickly they can adapt to this new system and whether, if it doesn't work, does Emma change back to the tried and tested and how quickly she does that. So that's what it is for me.
Well, and a quick follow to that, Jessy, is we got it from Mosey Me. What is the next step in the Champions League journey for Chelsea after defeating the final last year? Is there one thing that you're pinpointing to say this is what we need to do to win the whole thing?
Yeah, I actually think the group stage is going to be really good for this. I think the opportunity to play a side like Wolfsburg twice, obviously we'll want to top the group, but I think we can probably feel fairly confident about getting out the group at the very least. I expect Juventus again will be like a interesting and good side for us to play. But I'm not too worried because we don't tend to have problems with Joe Montemurro teams. But I think that's a great opportunity for Chelsea to look at solving some of these problems against higher quality opposition in a slightly more relaxed environment. In the WSL, we see how important those games against Arsenal and City are. But this Champions League group stage kind of gives you an opportunity to get into the rhythm against these different styles of play. Because we do see that across Europe as well. Like these teams play differently to how Arsenal City might play. So I think that's going to be really, really helpful for Chelsea as a side. Ultimately, though, you always need a hefty dose of luck in the Champions League, I think, to lift the thing. But, that experience, I think, of getting there, I think I've spoken before about how psychologically important it felt for Chelsea to get there, and maybe that was why they kind of ran out of steam. So I think even reaching the final will have added a lot to Chelsea when it comes to looking at winning the thing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more there. I think it's just reps at this stage at the highest of highest levels. That's what we need. All right, so we're going to move into a little bit of transfer talk. We know the window is now closed, and Chelsea have done a bit of business, but maybe not as much as we anticipated. Simon Oxlade asks Abdullah, even though we're a top team already, what type of player should we be targeting in the next transfer window? And I think he's probably looking at next summer, frankly, not January, to put us up another notch.
I still think and I'm putting a caveat to this. I still think a fullback is necessary on the right side, just because if Maren Mjelde is not back to her absolute best, and there's a little bit of doubt on whether she can get to that form or not after such a big injury, I still think the team is short a quality fullback in terms of even whether it's left or right, someone who can play both sides, but just to add that extra little bit of competition, but also to kind of be like, all right, we have a top-notch fullback, because it's the one area of the team you look at and you go, do we really have the best quality fullbacks in this area? Like, you can look at centre back, you've got Eriksson, Bright, Nouwen, and all that. You go goalkeeper, you got Aniek Berger, Carly Telford, Musovic. You look at midfield, G, and et cetera, even up front. But fullbacks the one place where you're like, would these fullbacks make it in any other top European side? Probably not. They probably have better fullbacks. So I would say that's still the one place I would go and look at. Right, again, depending on Maren Mjelde's return to form, but even then, I would still probably look to go and find one and bring her in.
All right, and I think maybe even a tweak to that is if they persist with the 3-4-3 or some combination thereof. Are we looking at wingbacks, right? Proper trained wingbacks, for a specialist system. That's an interesting question as well. Jessy, we got one from Abdul Squared 10. What are your expectations for the new signing as well as the new season? I mean, I think maybe if we've talked wingbacks and fullbacks, and you look at another position where Chelsea might need to strengthen?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other position probably has been at centre-back. And, I know there's something we might come on to later, but I feel like Millie and Magda have been fantastic together for a long period of time, but both of them are getting towards their late 20s. We've seen from Thiago Silva today, in fact, that, age really can be a number for elite centre-backs, but also it's something that you want to have the players coming through who, if anything does happen, is going to be able to have that backup. And something we really struggled with last season was when Magda picked up an injury, we just kind of totally went to pieces because she just anchors that defence. So obviously we've brought Aniek in. I think she's really talented player and someone I'm really excited to see get game time. But I think, perhaps whether we're looking next summer, maybe depending on how Aniek kicks on, I think I would still be interested in seeing us bring in maybe a more established centre-back who is in the more like 24 to 26 age category, just to perhaps look at how we start to pass that centre-back partnership on, thinking about that for the future,
Gotcha. Forever young for all these center backs, I think, is what we're hoping for. It parlays into a question from one Brandon Busby. Never heard of this man before. Seems kind of interesting as a human being. How many years does G or do G, Millie, Telford, Melda, Ingle, I think this parlays into your thoughts here, Jessy, so I'm going to pass it right back to you. Some of the squad is aging. There's just no doubt about that, right? And so are we going to see a couple more years? Are we going to see a gradual phase in, phase out of new talent into this team, do you think? Or are we kind of reaching a critical inflection point?
I've got to be honest, how many years does G have left sounds quite threatening when it's just written down like that.
I think we mean playing. Obviously, she's going to live forever, but playing at the highest level for Chelsea. How about that?
Yeah, look, I think, there's a couple of different things here. Brandon's mentioned Carly Telford. She signed a contract which was basically like moving half of her playing time over to coaching anyway. We brought in Musovic. She's obviously there to kind of back up Aniek Berger and probably to eventually replace Berger. So I think goalkeeping, we've kind of got sewn up. G, as I said earlier, is someone who I've thought is we're going to phase out of the midfield I probably thought that last season and this season, but she's had a great start to the year. I feel like this system suits her a lot more than the kind of diamond we were playing last year. I think it allows her to move forward into that number 10 space, which she's traditionally been her best in. Pernille Harder's kind of out on the inside left space, so there's room there for G to do what she does. But, again, I do think, Jessie Fleming, Erin Cuthbert, there are players there who are probably ready to be replaced. I do feel like Millie and Maren, as we've kind of touched on, there may be issues where, it feels like stuff started to be thought about, but we're not all the way there yet. Emma obviously rates Niamh Charles really highly. I think she said she thought Niamh Charles could be as good as Lucy Bronze, which is an insanely high bar to set a right back, but we've not really actually seen that yet. Ditto with Millie. I think Millie's got, longer than some of these players. She's still like late 20s as opposed to early 30s. But, that's obviously what Aniek's come in to do. So I don't know, I feel like
gradual phase a little bit is what I'm hearing.
I feel like I write these players off more than Emma does. And, like, classic example is Drew Spence. Like, I am always like, how does Drew Spence get minutes? But when she comes on and she does the dirty work for those last 10 minutes of the game, you're like, yes, thank God we've got Drew Spence. So, I think, gradual phasing is definitely the word for it. Emma will keep these players around for experience.
Well, we're going to pivot to the midfield here because I think there's a lot of questions, rightfully so. We've talked a little bit about this on our previous pods, but first two questions are from Jose and Janiek. How highly do you rate Jessie Fleming, and do you think she can make it into the team this season? I think there's a cry out from Janiek for more consistent minutes, as we've heard from both of you this year. So I guess, Abdullah, in your mind, what's her best position? And if you were to maybe approximate her minutes this season, how does that look for you right now?
I think, well, on the rating part, I think she's hugely rated. I think she's probably one of the top 3 prospects in the world right now, like hands down. Like we saw Canada, she's a gold medalist, for God's sake. I mean, that's already insane at the age that she is. So that's one thing. And if she's running Canada's midfield, there's nothing to say that she can't start, run Chelsea's midfield in the future. I think central or I think she can play in any of the midfield spots, meaning attacking midfield, central midfield, or even defensive midfield. And there's different ways of playing her there, but I think her skill set overall, to me, can translate across all 3. And I think depending on how you play, it can translate effectively. Now, for me, in terms of how many minutes she should get, well, I think if I'm not wrong, she had about 495 minutes last season, which is not much, all things considered. I think if she can double that, get 1,000+ minutes this season, because I think she's shown it. I think the Olympics proved it. Her few minutes of performance against Arsenal, she had a good performance. And every time she comes on, even if she comes on for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, we see a difference in the way Chelsea play. We see a difference in, and almost like an improvement in the tempo goes up. There's this clean passing of the ball. The progression is a lot quicker. It's, almost like a Kovacic-esque, like progression in terms of like the way she dribbles the ball. It's super quick back to front. So I think there'll be a lot more scope and a lot more room for a player like her in midfield this season, because I think coming up against, especially like Jessy was saying, I think in the Champions League group stages, someone like a Juventus would be a great test for her, just to kind of see where she's at club level. Throw her into a group stage against Juventus and see how she is over there. And if she comes through those, the 8 out of 10 or anything around that, then I don't think it will be too much to say, all right, go up against a Man City, go up against maybe a PSG or a Lyon. So I think there is scope for her to get at least 1,000+ minutes and really cement a place in this midfield, because if she does, then Emma's got a task in her hand. Do you play G, Leupolz, Ingle, Fleming? All 4 of them become extremely viable candidates in that midfield. Good problem to have, though. So.
Good problem to have indeed. I'm going to read this because Ghana Gazina has made an incredible paragraph statement, and I think he points out some things that, Jessy, I want you to kind of noodle on here. So his point is, like Abdullah, we have a lot of very good midfielders, but they all have their weaknesses. Ingle kind of lacks mobility. Jingling's play very well, but isn't the best defensively, although being one of our best players so far this year for sure. Abdullah's just touched on Fleming's qualities. Spence is solid all around, but not great at anything. Cuthbert is tenacious and creative, but unknown in this type of double six setup. Millie Loopholes is probably the most balanced midfielder, but she's been in poor form, as he says, basically since the end of last year. What does this coaching staff and Emma need to do to unlock the best, most balanced midfield? And then on top of that, because of Abdullah's good problem to have, how do you justify leaving out the ones who you don't select? I mean, this is, I'll let Abdullah answer the second one, but I want you to talk about the midfield and how it's constructed right now, Jessy.
Yeah, I think, the midfield is something that it feels like we've really seen a bit of a shift in this season. And I think that's also changed the way we can kind of like analyze who's got selected for it and who hasn't. So, for example, I feel like the diamond last year really didn't suit a player like G, and, it's been touched on in that, she isn't the best defensively. But it feels like when she's playing in a 2, she's got a bit more, there's more protection behind her. She's got more license to go forward. So I think she really works well in it. And I agree. I think in my ideal world, I would pair her with Loopholtz, but she hasn't had the best start to the season. And I think it makes sense that we've kind of seen Ingle come in. When it comes to Jessie Fleming, I would really like to see her nail down a slot in this midfield, but I think she's actually the player who loses out from this switch from the diamond to the 2, because the way G is playing, it makes sense to have her as like the more creative attacking force, and then someone who is a bit more defensive as that second midfielder. Whereas in the diamond, you could kind of see her as one of those like free 8s. The problem I think Jessy has is that, she's still a bit of an unknown when it comes to really regular football. She came to Chelsea from college. She was at UCLA. She's been doing serious bits for Canada since she was 15. But, even at the Olympics, she played amazingly. But lots of what she was doing was kind of shielding Canada from the onslaught they got from everyone else and then having ice in her veins to take penalties. It doesn't necessarily translate to club football in that way. And I think that's what Emma is still waiting to see from her. I think we will get there, but I think she's just recognizing that maybe that's a bit of a longer process than it seems from when you watch her international displays. I would also say that I would maybe like to see Cuthbert have a go in that G role. Like, she is just so tenacious, as that person said. Like, it's the perfect word to describe her. And she also offers a lot going forward creatively as well, like just the way she like hits the ball is like, I love watching her strike the ball. And I think she's really underrated the way she does that. Plus she offers a lot defensively. So I think we're probably going to see Ingle / Loopholtz alongside G, at least for the start of this season. But maybe that G role as time goes on, whether it's Fleming or Cuthbert, I think that's where we might start to see the change happen.
Yeah, Abdullah, I'll pass it to you here. You've talked about Loopholtz before and how she, just to start this year and maybe at the end of last year has not been on her best game. Is she at risk for being left out consistently?
As of the intermediate future, I would say yes. Just because, like we've said, like she just has not had the best start of the season, and it's just kind of been a weird sort of like, I think Emma wants to play her as a first choice because, like we've said, she brings the most balance. But if you're not informed and you're losing out, then it's a problem, and you have to get dropped, and you have to be replaced. And I think that's one thing that probably I like what Emma's doing this time is as much as it sucks that she's dropped because I think she's the most balanced. If she's seeing somebody not performing over 2-3 games and say, all right, poor form, sit out for a few games, bring somebody else in, I think that at least that keeps it fresh and everybody can keep coming in and playing. And just kind of in terms of that, I kind of I agree with Jessy in that I think Erin Cuthbert in one of the 2 midfield roles, because I think she can do both. I think she can do either or. I think she can be the creative one and then with her creativity, and I think she can be tenacious because I think she's probably one of the only people in midfield who can actually go in and really put in a mean tackle and really be aggressive and really push and really press people. Is there a problem maybe in terms of discipline, possibly maybe getting a few yellow cards? Possibly that could happen just because you're doing it more often. But I definitely feel like there is a scope to play her there. And Loopholtz, I think, gets dropped now, but I think assuming she gets back into form, I think she nails on one of those spots. I don't see her being dropped because, again, of what we've talked about. And that second spot, I think then really then frees you to test out that second spot. Whether you play Fleming there, whether you play G there, whether you play Ingle, whoever you want to play out of the other three, I think then that gives Emma a chance to kind of rotate and see, okay, who fits my system best? And maybe there's a specific player for a specific type of opponent that I can play who that works perfectly for. And I think then that's maybe a way to justify to the players that get left out, saying, listen, I'm leaving you out for this game because for me, this person's skill set suits the opposition that we're playing. And in the next game, because then at least then all three of them know to some extent that, okay, cool, I'm not playing this game because 1, 2, 3, 4 reason, or, 2, 3, 4 reasons. So I would say that's kind of how you have to justify it. But in terms of a long-term, who's it going to be? I think it's Leupolds +1.
I mean, one thing I'd say here is every player in a squad is droppable. Everyone. Maybe Messi isn't, but I don't know. Name another. I mean, Mason Mount got pulled to halftime in the Chelsea Spurs game on Sunday, right? And he's a player that has consistently played the most minutes for Chelsea over the last 2 seasons. So, it happens to every player. They go through tough patches, and you just expect them as professionals to respond and get back to their best, and that's all you can really ask. And that's what I'm sure Emma is asking at the current time. We're going to continue tactics talk here. And the Couch, Ty Moreland, Adi Joseph, all coming in with really great questions. The one I'm going to highlight here is, what player is everyone looking forward to most in continuing their development this year? So maybe someone who isn't at the top of their game, but that they want to really push forward this season. I'll start with Jessy.
I think someone who's maybe been overlooked is Niamh Charles, because I think she had some really, really great moments, and I think people's wish to get fullbacks in have maybe covered up some of what she did really well. She did struggle at points, but that's understandable. She's really young. She's been playing in a position that isn't her natural position, but Emma clearly believes that she has the ability to play, whether it's at fullback or wing back long term. And I think she's someone who in England there's always been a lot of excitement around, and Chelsea I think did really well to pick her up. She got a lot of minutes last season, perhaps when people didn't expect her to. I think people worried that she'd kind of come into the club and not really get a chance to play, and kind of through Maren Mjelde's misfortune she got the opportunity to play in a Champions League final, which is amazing for a player's development. And I think if she can kick on, she becomes your fullback solution. If Hayes is right and what Hayes thinks she sees is genuinely true. So I think that's someone I'd really like to see continue to get game time this year.
For me, I think it's we've said it so many times, but I think Jessie Fleming. I'm excited to see what she does in this midfield. I'm excited to see kind of, just because of the bags of ability that she has and the potential that she has. I just want to see her when she goes in and she gets maybe 2 games or 3 games of 90 minutes and really plays in some games. I want to see what kind of an effect that she can have against teams, even especially in the fact that Chelsea like keeping possession. So I want to see her in a possession heavy game. What does she do with the ball? How does she break down teams? And, what does she learn from that? How does she take it to the next game and the next game after that? And I think for me, that's one of the more exciting things, just because she's, again, like I said, for me, top 2-3 talents of the year right now in terms of potential. So yeah, that would be my pick.
I'll take Erin Cuthbert then. Easy one for me. I think she's already been really good so far this year, but I think to our earlier points on previous podcasts, just nailing down a consistent role for her, I think will help her explode onto the scene and really become one of those indispensable type players for Chelsea. It's awesome to be a utility player. You can play anywhere, but I think when she really gets slotted into a role, she'll make it her own. So I will go there. A question from Adi Joseph, and I think this is an interesting one that you probably already thought about. Let's take Chelsea versus Man City, Chelsea versus Arsenal, Chelsea versus Barcelona, really top teams, right? On the left, you currently have options between John Anderson and Guro Reiten. What are your thoughts in those types of matchups in this current system? Who would you prefer, and what does that kind of look like for you? And then I'll start with Jessy.
Okay, I'm going to throw something totally wild out there, but I think, okay, this is kind of ignoring like in this system, but something that I would maybe be interested in seeing is something Sweden did at the Olympics, which was to play Magda as their left back. I feel like if Aniek Nouwen was to really take that step up against the very best teams who are really going to go at you, say down their right wing, we know like how good Magda is at like 1v1s and stuff like that. I'd be really intrigued to see us revert to a back four and put her in there as that like more defensive option. You know, she's not going to be like getting forward loads with the ball, but given that Chelsea have just been ripped to shreds massively down that side specifically over last season, that would be like my pick, I think, maybe as having a left-footed player there. I think otherwise, if the back three really gets settled, then I'd probably still look to Guro, because I think if you really, you know, if you feel like she can genuinely play at a wing back and offer you enough defensively, I would take what she offers you going forward, you know. Whereas I feel like there are so many questions around Joanna defensively. I don't see the point in having her as the wing back necessarily if you think she's going to get bypassed anyway. Just take Guru's attacking stuff and run with it. But yeah, as I say, I'd be intrigued to see Magda at left back for Chelsea.
Okay, interesting wild card. Abdullah, what are your thoughts?
You know, weirdly enough, I was on a similar train of thought in terms of having Guro Reiten on left, because for me, in terms of, and I'm talking in terms of the back three now. Jesse put it in terms of a back four. What I'm saying is, when you're playing Magda Eriksson, you're sort of left-sided centre-back, and I know we touched upon it earlier in a previous pod. I think if you're playing her at left centre-back, you inherently are telling your left wing-back, go forward. Like, you offer something defensive, but you go forward and you do your stuff there because you've got someone who's positionally good and can cover that left side. And while for Sweden, she plays left back in a back four, but in the back three, she also kind of plays on that side. And the whole point of playing there was when Joanna's playing on the left side, it's to kind of talk to her and get her position correct and kind of cover her deficiencies defensively. So if you're going to do that for Anderson, then you might as well do it for Guro Reiten, who's probably better going forward. I mean, we saw the cross for Sam Kerr last week against Everton. That was a brilliant cross. If we can get more of that from Guro Reiten, and you have someone like Magda, who's really good defensively, he's not really going to go forward and can cover that left back and left-sided centre-back position, then for me, yeah, you play Guro Reiten and you really let her loose. And I guess the only question mark will come in against the top teams. Will they be able to take advantage of the space that's left in behind, and can Magda cover that a lot? But then in that sense, you're going to have to tell Guro, look, you need to sit back a little bit more, protect Magda, play with her, and really hit them on the counterattack. And she's got the pace and the dribbling ability to be able to do that. But I think she can be trained in this left wing back position. And the more I'm seeing her there, the more I'm kind of liking it, especially in a back three, the more I'm liking Guro Reiten at left wing back.
She gives me strong Marcus Alonso vibes, you know. You're talking about left wing backs who can't really defend, but like can put a ridiculous cross in. Sometimes that's worth it, you know. If you believe in your back three, believe in your back three.
She runs down the wing for me.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the whole point, right? The whole point of playing a back three is to let your wing backs loose and really let them become more of an attacking force than they are in a back four. So if you are going to do this back three and you're playing, whether it's Jess Carter or Neem Charles at right back and Guro Reiten at left back, you just let, at least against teams that you can, you let them go and you do it. And against Everton, we saw the fruits of letting Guro Reiten really just move forward.
I mean, we actually talked to Dan and Joe recorded the Tinkerman podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about when playing a back three, you don't need 7 players in defense. And oftentimes, Chelsea have been up against really top competition on the men's side, and so they've really been a little bit more conservative. But I think this women's team has so much offensive potential that you don't need to sit all wing backs and midfield behind the ball and just let the front three do their thing. Like, you need to have more connection there. And so it's an interesting thought exercise for sure that we'll just see over the next couple of weeks how they kind of evolve. It's a brand new system. They're only 3 games into playing it, so more to come on that one. A quick question from Sushil. Lauren James update. Haven't seen her on a matchday squad or anything. I think Emma kind of covered off on this, and I'll take this one really quickly. She's kind of going through some of the growing pains of joining a big club, and I think is probably a little ways off right now from being a part of the squad on a match day. But obviously, we hope that she kind of gets settled as quickly as humanly possible and is able to be featured, because we do have some games coming up where potentially Jessy, she could rotate in and be another option there, and that would be really intriguing.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see her play. I think, the club are taking the right attitude. We saw last season at United, she just got no consistent game time because she was being rushed back. United had a whole host of injury problems across their squad, and I think that was part of it. And it seems like she's just kind of had something recurring that Chelsea are just, especially when you've got younger players, just keen to sort out, make sure they're back to full fitness. Chelsea don't need her to play, right now with the attacking talent they've got. So why risk aggravating something long term? But yeah, when she's ready and, when she's back to full fitness, we probably haven't seen her play at full fitness last season because of, how in and out she was and the injuries she was carrying. So I think it's going to be really exciting when she does come through. Injury
rules apply to everyone, it turns out. So don't rush back, get healthy, and then we'll see you. A quick question from Santa 15XO. Do you prefer club or country football? Okay, interesting. Abdullah, go.
I want to say club football because I love the Champions League too much to not say club football. I think it's just every time we get into, obviously now we're seeing it in the group stages, but when these top teams, it's almost as if we, on the men's side, it almost feels like we see top teams play against each other very regularly, almost on a weekly basis, or every second week. But in women's football, it doesn't seem like that. It almost seems few and far between. So when you get to a Champions League quarterfinal, semi-final, round of 16-ish, thing, you really get to see like, okay, they've been playing this entire season against these lesser teams for these games, and I think that's the most intriguing thing for me. So club football for me.
Yeah, for me, club football, hands down. I always enjoy country football more than I think I'm gonna, but as someone who's an England fan, it's only really just started getting good. So Nick, I'm intrigued because I always see US women's national team as like the real enemy. So like, are you really like hot on them?
Yeah, my love of football started internationally, with World Cup. So I do love that tournament. I think there is something really, really special about a World Cup, and it's why I hope they don't go to the every 2-year model, frankly, because I think it would ruin the kind of special essence that it carries. I obviously watch more club football than I do international football, and I think after you watch club football for a long enough period of time, you realize just how much higher the level is than international football. And so if you're a purist on that, I could see club football all the way. International football is a fun place to be, although not recently for the U.S. men's team, but our women's team has been really good for a long time. So I'm kind of split, honestly, because I love both. They're really different atmospheres in watching over here too. So kind of get a little bit of both. So I'll split the difference there. A question from Eric, Quickshot CFC, who is clearly trying to troll me on this, a person that I know and love. Why are y'all so handsome? Well, Eric, I see you trying to butter me up. I see it, okay? Just send me the text. We'll get you in with a real question. But thank you for the enormous compliment that you've paid to everyone on here. Appreciate that. All right, we're going to get into our last couple here, and these are from Discord, so we got to pay special mention. Mike from Rhode Island, assuming everyone is healthy and ready to go. Everyone in the entire squad. No injuries. Everyone's at 100% energy on FIFA. What's the ideal starting 11 that Emma can field? Abdullah, go.
Okay, I'm just going to go straight to it. No explanations. I'm just going to name a starting 11. So I think Anne Katzenberger and goal. Guro Reiten, a left wing back. I think Eriksson, Nouwen, and Bright as your centre backs. I think you get Maren Mjelde at right wing back. You then play Leupolz and Fleming in midfield. Then I would go with the front three of Harder, Kerr, and Kirby.
Ooh, all right. Jessy?
I'm going to agree, but if we're playing this back three, if we're playing this system, I'm going to go Niamh Charles at right wing back rather than Maren Mjelde. I just want to see more dynamism, going forward. And I'm having Lauren James as my first sub.
Ooh, okay. Interesting. How about this? Let me throw a little something different at you guys. Maybe a little switch up in the back three. I'm putting Mjelda in the Azpilicueta role in the back three on the right side. And then I'm playing Cuthbert on the right wing because, again, I don't think you need to defend with that many players in this Chelsea team. I think you want them getting forward. I think you want them scoring goals. And so I think that would be my change up. I mean, it's hard to argue with the front three, obviously, and kind of where the midfield's going. But I think that would be something that I would be intrigued by, especially just having Mjelda's experience back there to be able to cut out those right side threats. I think that would be really intriguing for me.
I think that's a great shot.
I like it.
All right, and then the last one, we're getting into kind of the preseason predictions and how we're feeling right now. With Techie Tiger saying the FAWSL is about to take another kind of jump to another level in the title race with so many competitive teams. What key fixture should we keep an eye out as a barometer to decide for the title contenders? Abdullah, I mean, you mentioned it. City had a rough week, right? Chelsea had a rough week to start the season. Arsenal are inevitably going to Arsenal. What should we be looking for outside of the kind of the top three fixtures that we know are going to be difficult?
Well, we could have said Everton, but Everton aren't helping our cause here. So, someone's ruining the party for all of us. So, at this point, maybe Tottenham get lucky again and they do the same thing against Arsenal. And then, we have another oh no, handball, but is it really a handball? But it's actually not, it's a handball. So, it's tough because, I mean, you look at the teams, Brighton's had a good start to the season. Manchester United. I think Manchester United has probably got to be the ones now, right? I mean, Mark Skinner's had a good start to the season. Everton have just not done anything for 2 weeks. So I would say the United game outside of Arsenal and Manchester City, like we said, I think United are probably the ones that might be the banana skin peel that other teams trip on and concede the title to their rivals.
Right. You have Mario, Luigi, and Bowser on the Mario Kart track, and all of a sudden,
Donkey Kong.
Boom! Just a little banana skin there. I guess let's get into the preview because that's who Chelsea play next, right? I mean, this is again a very difficult start to the season for the club. Although if you can navigate this game effectively, it kind of goes a little bit lighter after this. So this is the match coming up on Sunday, the 26th of September. It's at 6:30 in the morning, my time, in the Central Time zone in the U.S., 12:30 in the U.K. Look, this is up at United. Jessy, this is a place where you have been effusive in your praise of their support in the past. There are some former Chelsea players in Maria Thorisdottir, Hannah Blundell, Jackie Gronin. They're all likely to start for United, right? So it's going to be tough. And maybe you can talk about the atmosphere a little bit that Chelsea are going to roll into.
Yeah, this is probably going to be the tastiest away game we have this season, I'm going to say, just based off how amazing the United support are. Fair play to them. If my club had waited until 2-3 years ago to create a women's team, I'd be pissed off, but they've somehow got over it, and credit to them. They support them really well. But yeah, all the Chelsea interest there as well. Lots of former players who've only left recently, and of course we took Lauren James off their hands this summer as well, which adds a nice spice to it. And it'll be an interesting one. We drew 1-1 there last season on the opening day, which led to similar concerns about how Sam Kerr would never score any goals for Chelsea. That's aged well. And that we were too defensively open, and Leah Golden scored a late equaliser. So it'll be a good test, I think. This is quite a different United side from the one we played last season. Casey Stoney's been replaced by Mark Skinner. They've had a lot of turnover in their squad, but they've looked really good so far at the start of the season. But, I think Chelsea have to win this. Having lost to Arsenal, there's really no room for error across the whole season, but especially this early on, and I think it's going to be tricky. It's frustrating the international break has come when it has because, the Everton win was a great boost. And then you've got everyone, and I mean literally everyone. I'm pretty sure it's just Maren, Jessy, and like Drew Spence kicking around at Cobham. Emma Hayes is like doing commentary for the England game, so that's how little she has to do at the moment on Tuesday. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one, I think, to come straight back into it. But yeah, must win really.
Yeah, it's a tough look, Abdullah, when you have a tumbleweed rolling across the pitch at Cobham because there's no one there to do any of the work on the field. And it does, I think for Chelsea, right, having more players away than United will have during this break means that Chelsea have a harder task. Not only is this game on the road, and that is always going to be difficult, but you worry about fitness coming back from these damn international breaks.
Yeah, I know, and we've seen how players pick up injuries and niggles once they come back. So then they play through it. The last game of the international season, suddenly they come back to club, and the club do an assessment like, you actually can't play. You have to rest this, otherwise it's going to get worse. So then you never know whether you're going to get your starting 11 or whether you're going to have to make 3-4 changes or 1 or 2 changes. So I think once they get back into Cobham and they start kicking in later this week, then I think, or rather next week for you guys, it's already a new week for me. It's I think that will really determine who comes in, and I think it's going to affect both squads because obviously we've seen Ella Toon go for England duty as well. People like that. So it's tough. It's in like we've always seen it, right? The game right after the national break is always the one where you're likely to slip up because you lose the momentum, you lose the kind of everything you talked about, and then suddenly you've gone from, all right, I'm playing with one set of players, and I'm suddenly back with another set of players, and it doesn't matter whether you're 4 or 5 of the players are the same or 3 of the players are the same. It's a completely different environment. So this game then becomes even more important than what it previously could have been. So yeah.
Well, and United are off to a pretty good start in the league so far. Obviously, 6 points. They beat Reading 2-0, and they beat Leicester 3-1 on the road at the last game before the international break. Abdullah, do you want to roll through some of the stats here that you put into the script and kind of shape up what is likely to be a cagey affair away?
Yeah, so I mean their stats are for United are like pretty good. I mean, so they've had an XG overall of like 1.52, which is pretty good for first 3-4 games of the season. And weirdly enough, they had them more away from home than they had them at home. So they've got 2.27 at home. Away from home, and 0.76 at home. So almost going to United is a good thing because they just don't seem to be able to create good goal scoring opportunities. As good. They've averaged 2.5 goals a game. They've conceded 0.5, so they've been actually very, very good defensively. And I think that's going to be a real test for this front three to come up against. While United may have not played the strongest of opposition, it's still going to be a tough sell when you've got experienced players and obviously 2 ex-Chelsea players and Thora Stoddard and Hannah Blundell who've really started well this season. They've had 50% clean sheets, 100% at home. So again, that's a big thing. They've scored in every game that they've played. They've had an average of 63% possession, which I think that will go down this season. So actually, that's going to be, for me, that's a very interesting stat because to me it says United want the ball and they want to play with the ball and they want to be able to attack and really impose themselves on this game. But against Chelsea now, do we see them revert and say, okay, maybe we need to take a step back and let them have the ball? Or do they still, again, try and play toe-to-toe with Chelsea and say, okay, we're gonna go in there, we're going to try and take the ball and go from there? They've taken about 24 shots per game, which is crazy. It's a lot of shots. Their shot conversion rate is 10% overall, but 13% at home compared to the 9 away. So obviously they're better at home. It's weird. They can convert shots better, but then they have a lower XG than they have away. But then they've scored.
They had 33 shots at Leicester. I mean, that's crazy.
Insane.
I mean, that's Chelsea territory, and without the front three
fouls,
to back it up.
They've just committed 7 fouls per game. They've had 9 against them. They've won 0 and 2 penalties overall, and they've conceded 0 and 2. So, overall, it seems like in some stats they're better at home, and especially defensively, they're better at home. So I think that's the key thing. It might just come down to attack versus defense and who can come out on top.
I like our odds there for sure. Just a quick reminder of the table because we have to go there. Just as we all predicted, Brighton and Hove Albion at the top of the table at the beginning of the season with a 7-goal differential. They're not screwing around right now. I mean, they're doing the business. Arsenal are right behind them with a 5-goal diff. United on 4 and Tottenham on 2 goals. So that's your top 4 right there. Just as we all predicted, Tottenham beating City somehow, or for reasons that we can't understand. Villa in 5th, City in 6th, Chelsea in 7th. So that's kind of your table look right now. So Chelsea do have a huge opportunity here, Jessy, to make a statement, right, and to climb up the table a little bit. And I guess I wanted to get your thoughts on really what we can expect from City outside of the stats that Abdullah just went through. You've talked about Elatun a little bit, so maybe let's start there.
Yeah, so the big thing Mark Skinner's done differently from Casey Stoney is that he's been playing Elatun as a false 9. I initially thought maybe this was kind of just for convenience. United obviously had Kristen Press to play as their 9 last year. They don't have her anymore. And Alessia Russo and Martha Thomas kind of either haven't been fit or have been bedding in. But it seems like he's really into it, and it's been working, I'd say, reasonably well for them so far. I think they maybe at points have struggled to get her on the ball or for another player to make those runs in front of her if she has dropped deeper to get the ball. But there's no doubting that she's like an incredible player, very, very creative, and I think she will be a handful for this Chelsea side because, it's always tricky when you've got a player who's dropping deep. Do you get one of your centre-backs to go for her? Do you expect one of your midfielders to pick her up? So I'm sure that's something that Emma will have been looking at this week, trying to figure out what to do. The other thing that's been quite interesting as well is how high Onabatia has been pushed up the pitch, kind of from her left-back position. I think that's something that Chelsea will feel like they can exploit, but I think also it's a bit of a concern. She's a really exciting attacking player, and she'll be playing basically behind Leah Galton, who's also very, very good. And I think this will be a really tough test for this back three. We saw how easy Arsenal found it to exploit by having Beth Mead or Miedemar drift out, into those spaces between our wide centre-backs and the wing-backs. And that's something that Leah Galton and Onabatia will be really able to, they'll be looking to do. Whether they're able to do it is obviously something that Chelsea will have to figure out. But, picking up Elatun and dealing with the possible overload combo of Batia and Galton would be the two things that I'd pick out as something Chelsea will really have to watch out for.
Okay, well, let's talk about one player, and you probably already mentioned this player, Jessy, that you're looking for to cause Chelsea, some potential issues. To be fair, I think it's always, fair play to look at that. Who is your player that United have that might cause us a couple of problems?
Yeah, for me, it's Leah Galton. She got that equaliser last year. I think she's a fantastic player. She's so good going forward. She's great at making runs into the box from that left wing position, and she can really do you with her dribbling as well. I just think seeing how, Chelsea did struggle against Arsenal with those wide players, she'll probably be feeling pretty good about playing in that space. It'll be interesting to see, obviously if we stick with that switch we saw before the international break to put Carter in the middle and Bright on that right-hand side up against Galton. That'll be really interesting to see, how she potentially deals with that. Also because it's going to be, this is where the Elatun thing I think becomes quite interesting, because actually what Chelsea have really struggled with is players kind of going round and pulling balls back into the box, kind of heading towards the byline, especially in those Champions League games last season. But with Elatun as the 9, you'd expect those players, those wide players, Leah Galton will probably be Kirsty Hansen on the other side, to be running into the box, which is obviously where our centre-backs are going to be. So it's going to be interesting to see what Mark Skinner thinks about doing about that, because logically I would be looking to push Leah Galton into more those one-on-one situations with Millie Bright. But yeah, she's a fantastic player and definitely one to watch.
For me, I think it's Onabatia. I think she's had a really good start to the season. I think she's been pushed up a lot higher than she was last season. And I think she's almost playing like this inverted fullback role, but almost like an extra auxiliary winger, where she, we've seen her in the box. We've seen her score a fantastic goal from outside the box earlier in the season. I mean, that was probably the icing on the cake. So for me, I think, and it kind of just going into Jesse's point, with maybe on one side, they're getting Leah Galton to go into 1v1s. I think on the other side, you could get an Onabatia and you can get her to cut inside and take that space between the fullback and centre back, kind of what Arsenal did with Beth Mead and kind of how Jess Carter got floored by Miedema. I think there's a potential to do that on that side. So basically then Chelsea have to figure out, well, okay, on one side we're being taken up on the inside, on the other side we're being taken up on the outside. So then that's where I think maybe United could have some joy and kind of trying to exploit one or the other spaces, whether it's out wide in the 1v1 or whether it's in the interior channels, between, and she's quick and she's got a decent cross on her and a decent pass on her. So, maybe this is where maybe Niamh Charles comes back in just to kind of get her pace in there to kind of deal with Onabatia. So I'd be intrigued to see. But for me, I think she's had a really good start to the season.
I'll go Toon just because I think the back three, until it's like well drilled and there's muscle memory in the system, I think there's always going to be the threat from a really good striker, and so I'll take the easy way out on that one. Are there any lineup changes, just to close this out, are there any lineup changes for you, Abdullah, that could happen given the international break and players coming back and fitness and all that kind of stuff?
I think if everybody's healthy and fit, I actually think we see a similar team to the one against Everton, because you almost like they won 4-0. In some sense, how do you justify dropping anybody from that game for this game, right? So I don't anticipate anything unless there's an injury. So I would say it's the same team as Everton unless there's an injury.
Same for you, Jessy?
Yeah, I mean, Fran Kirby's maybe the doubt. She didn't make the England squad on Friday. Serena Wigman said that basically they were monitoring her load, so it's not entirely clear what's happened there. Obviously, there'll be a game on Tuesday that she might get a chance to play in. So that would be my one question mark of someone who might not be fully fit. But, the other thing is whether the hashtag Justice for Jessy, that's the hashtag I'm coining, movement, whether, Fleming having been back at Cobham helps her get a nod. But the problem is probably because everyone else has been away, you've not drilled her with anyone else. So I don't really see what benefit she gets other than being fresher. But that's the only change that would maybe be interesting to see.
Does, if there is a doubt for Kirby, is Cuthbert the solution that you'd put back in there up top, or is there a different player that you'd be looking at?
Yeah, I guess you've got to look at Cuthbert or Charles, right? Because the problem is Cuthbert played at a right wing back. So if you are going to push her up, you need then someone to come in there. That would be an interesting one, because Cuthbert looked really good at right wing back, and I wonder if we'd see Charles play ahead of her rather than see her push up, just because it felt like Cuthbert was a lot more reliable in that position. And I think, as I say, with United's main threats coming down the left, Emma probably won't want to risk that. Fair
play. Okay, Abdullah, any final thoughts before we go into the weekend?
No, I think I'm just excited for club football to be back next week. So that's really much the only thing.
Yeah, these international breaks can seem like forever in a day. But look, Chelsea women are back on Sunday, 12:30 UK time, 6:30 my time in the morning on Sunday, so bright and early. We thank you for all of the questions. We thank you for your just incredible support of this team. The movement's growing, and we're really happy to see that. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.